Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
And that, of course, was Simone Waddell. Off the Art of Collaboration album, Simone is on the phone. Hello, Simone.
Hello there. How you going, guys?
Going very well. Sorry about that. We had to just do a bit of admin and, it's all good.
It's all good. Hey, Simone, you're on the line listening to yourself for a little while there. When you produce really good stuff like that, do you still listen back with a little smile on your face thinking, that's pretty nice?
I do, and I remember it takes me back to the days in the studio and creating those backing vocal arrangement parts and putting the piece all together, even choosing which songs would go on the record. When I listen back, I do. Very nostalgic for all those times, absolutely.
Well, in a first for this program, I did a little bit of research. We don't do that very often. This is your fifth studio album, and the lineup of people, apart from your good self on it, includes people like Tommy Emmanuel, James Morrison, Ray Thistlethwaite, Paul Grewowski, and someone who's always on many albums, that is more, because it says and more, to a pretty handy lineup of musos, I would have thought.
Well, there's 60 people featured.
So poor old Moore covers 56 of them.
Yeah, he does.
More means 56.
Wow.
Horn players and guitarists and drummers, and that was my vision originally. That's why I called it the Art of Collaboration. I really believe we have so much incredible world-class talent here in Australia, and I wanted to create a project that could bring everybody together, feature everyone, make everybody shine, and it's all Australian, so all the music is Australian, whether it's songs that have been reimagined into the jazz idiom, like Burn For You, Fall At Your Feet, Beds Are Burning, Horses, like songs like that, or my original music, and all the players are also Australian. So it's the first of its kind. It is unprecedented in Australia to have a jazz record that's so extensive, that has so many people on it, and all Australian in that sense.
And congratulations, too, on being able to say the word unprecedented without any reference to the COVID pandemic, because generally speaking, that's the only time you ever hear the word unprecedented. Because I thought I picked up traces of maybe Loretta Pomero, Marchiani, Matt McMahon in amongst all of that, he said, reading off the website.
Oh, Loretta's on there. Matt McMahon is on there, yeah.
It's almost like there's a list of names on your website that I may have just been referencing. So I guess one of the things that interests me, Simone, about this album is, as you say, you've reimagined 4 or 5 really, really well-known songs. The one we just had, Fall At Your Feet, obviously a Crowded House hit. We've got another one coming up at the end of the conversation. I guess in my head, what makes you choose those songs? And part B, how do the original artists feel about you taking it and making a completely different interpretation of it?
Well, I know myself as a songwriter, if somebody ever chooses to perform one of my songs or recreate one of my songs, it's a great honour. And so that's the first. Actually, that was your second question.
Yep.
The first. And it was a compound question. What else did you say?
How do you choose the songs?
How did you choose those songs? Yeah. Well, I did deliberate because there are so many, obviously, iconic songs. And I wanted to make a record with songs that did relate to people. And songs that people knew, like Justify, from In Excess, bands and songs that people knew. Because the thing is, sometimes for the layman and for the average person, jazz can be a little bit inaccessible if it's quite sophisticated and complicated. Like, I actually even did my master's degree and postgraduate degree and thesis all in vocal performance and jazz. I know how complicated it can get. Whereas for the average person, you just want to listen to something that you enjoy and that you like. So I thought about all those things, and I tried to move away from my highly academic background and into what an average person wants to hear musically, and those songs just resonate so deeply in the Australian psyche. So, I had to come to a short list. There were many songs that I considered, but those ones I felt, even like Horses are so anthemic in Australia. So it was wonderful to do a great version of that. Beds of Burning has such a social justice, incredible, powerful message, which is why I included Didgeridoo and some Aboriginal singers to really make it more authentic. And Bird for You is a song I've been singing since I was a teenager. I absolutely love it. So sometimes it was just songs that I just completely loved myself as well. So yeah, there was a selection process, but again, I was just thinking of who would hear it and what would they like to hear.
And thanks for making Rob and I feel so old by saying you've been singing Burn For You since you were a teenager. It missed our teenage years by about 30 years. But thanks. Yeah, that's all we've got time for now. No.
Simone, I want to take you back to the word collaboration because it seems quite unique to me, the world of jazz. We have Ross Williamson on this station who delivers a jazz program. We had a man in the morning, the man in South Australia when I was in community radio there. You listen to the ABC Jazz. So whenever they introduce or back announce a song, it's not just, that's Fred and the Ferrets. It's Fred and the Ferrets, and Billy Smith's on drums, and Fred Bloggs is on lead guitar. It's always a collaboration of everyone who is involved in the music. It seems very unique to jazz, and you've spoke about that so much at the start of this interview about how an album comes together and so many people involved. Is that sort of a jazz family thing?
That is an excellent point. And I myself realised that when I went to Berkeley. Berkeley is a music college in America, and I was the first Australian actually to get a scholarship to go over there. And I remember going to the States and seeing something like an event or a concert, and they'd always they wouldn't just list the singer, they would list exactly what you're saying, and who plays drums and who's on bass, and it seemed to be extremely important who's playing the trumpet on this gig and who's playing the piano on this gig. It wasn't just the singer. And from my experience, which sounds very similar to yours, I believe that is unique to jazz because with a pop show, particularly any contemporary pop artist, they might just say, Bruno Mars is playing tonight at Kudos Arena.
That's right.
No,
the other blokes don't get a gig.
Who's on drums? Who's on bass?
Who's on first? Oh no, that's a comedy routine, isn't it? Because I think one of the things that has always annoyed me over my many years of listening to music, we were dragged through the whole orchestral stuff as part of high school education. And the bloke that stands out the front and waves a stick around gets all the applause and all the plaudits, and the people who are actually making the music don't get a look in. It's the same with these DJs. Your blokes that get up there and do the wink, 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 wink on the count. Nothing about the artist that actually made the music. It's all about the performer. It's not on for mine.
Yeah, it's an uncanny reality, isn't it? It's enigmatic.
Oh, there's your next album title, The Uncanny Reality.
No, it's good, and it makes it have a real sense of family from my listening. And I'm not necessarily a fan of jazz music per se. Some of it is brilliant. The real raw, true jazzy stuff I don't quite get into, but there's a uniqueness about the whole delivery of jazz. It's everyone is in and everyone's appreciated and rewarded. Well,
absolutely, and that's exactly what you said there, that you're not necessarily a fan of jazz because it can get, for some people, for the average person who's not a jazz fan, the solos can end up very long. There can be a lot going on where people don't quite understand what's really happening here. And this record is songs. And so, yes, it's in a contemporary jazz style, but it's songs and it's accessible, and you don't have to be a hardcore jazz fan to fall in love with this kind of style and this kind of delivery of the music. So that was a really deliberate thing. I didn't want to exclude people who start to feel like jazz is just so out there and complicated. So that's why I made it the way I made it.
And I think the other thing that I'm interested in knowing is when I was growing up, I grew up in the 70s, and so I was going to be Paul McCartney, or I was going to, Leo Sayer was kicking around in those days, and they were very much the pop, the rock kind of thing. Growing up, were you a jazz fan, or were you also into what we'll call mainstream commercial pop stuff? What got you across to jazz from there?
Interestingly, some of the Australian jazz singers, that's where I started. So Vince Jones, I started listening to Vince Jones when I was about 12 or 13, and I thought he was just fantastic. And I had cassettes, and still do, of Vince Jones. And then one of the best performances of my life was when I was invited to open up for Vince Jones. And I just felt like, well, my work here is done.
It's hard to top, isn't it?
It's phenomenal. And I actually there was a cassette called Watch What Happens, which is one of his, and I took it along that night, and I asked the audience, does anybody else have this, or am I the most hardcore Vince Jones? No one else had it. I said, that's it. I am the number one fan in the room. Like, this is extremely exciting. So actually, even though jazz originated in America, it was the Australian artist, Kate Sobrano. She had a wonderful record called Kate and Her Septet. And so I learned a lot of jazz songs and standards from Vince Jones and Kate Sobrano. And it was then that I started moving into Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald and other foundational jazz artists from the States. But I actually did begin with the Aussie artists that were singing jazz.
Is Geelong's own mental block jazz singer Geelong? Carry on. Next question, Neil. Will come to me.
Because I think if you talk to people of my generation and musical interest, which your 70s, 80s commercial stuff, I would have thought another name that pops up. Well, in fact, if someone said to me, name 3 Australian jazz performers, there would be Paul Grabowski, who gets a run on your album, and James Morrison, because both of those have had high-profile TV gigs, I guess. The third one was a person called Kerry Waddell, who came into my life because she used to sing That's Life as a Sanyo ad, I reckon, back in the early 70s. She was a bit of a front-running pioneer for women in Australian jazz, I would have thought.
Oh, hands down. Kerry was my mentor. So Kerry was my mentor for years, and I sang for her for the first time when I was 16. And I did my postgraduate research on Kerry, and I've spent many hours with her, and I feel extremely privileged and honoured. To this day, even when I'm coaching other students or performing myself, I have Kerry's voice in my head, reminding me of things. So I feel like I have a huge imprint of Kerry upon me, and I don't think there's anybody like her. Her approach was so excellent in everything that she did. And she did sing many jingles and commercials. She sang Sons and Daughters, the theme song.
Okay.
On that, she did a lot of phenomenal things, like predominantly in the 80s. And I even was by her bedside when she ended up in ICU and passed away. And that was one of the saddest days of my life, saying goodbye to my beloved mentor, Kerry Waddell. And she lived a wonderful life, offering a lot of amazing music to this country and around the world, but certainly to this country.
My mental block has disappeared, and Renee Gayer is the name that I was thinking of, who had a sort of a pop crossover, but when she sings that sultry jazz stuff, as good as there's been going around, I would have thought.
Renee Gayer is a phenomenal singer and really soulful. Yeah, I think she rates as absolutely one of the best singers we've ever had in Australia, hands down.
Bearing in mind that this is community radio and therefore people around our town listen. Renee lives about 5 minutes drive from the studio, so hopefully she's listening and hearing that rap. She'd be very pleased to know that.
Oh, yeah, she's incredible.
We're hoping to get her in here for a chat at some stage. I guess the other question, Simone, that comes to mind before we play another one of your songs is, if you are, In Excess or Cold Chisel or the Mentalist, anything, all those bands, there were plenty of outlets in pubs that would walk over broken glass to have these bands there. What sort of gigs are available for people like you to allow mainstream listeners to see you live? Where do you perform?
Well, in the last 2 years, not very much.
Yes, on Facebook.
Yeah, I actually did. I did a lot of online shows on Facebook the last 2 years because it was quite prohibitive. There are a few jazz venues in Sydney and in Melbourne. Paris Cat is one that I love performing at in Melbourne. But honestly, we have lost quite a few. The Basement was very, very popular up here in Sydney near Circular Quay, and that closed down. We've had quite a few close. So for live music, I'm really hoping that we do have a great turnaround, and that because even before COVID, things were becoming difficult with maintaining live music venues. So it's an interesting question because it's not, and particularly with the genre of jazz that many people in Australia do actually love. There are a lot of people that do love it, but we don't have a lot of places to perform, and I do wish, for one, I wish there was more.
Simone, it might be contrary to what we were talking about before with collaboration, but a lot of the venues are small, and if people are going to really hear your voice uniquely, what is the minimum number of artists you need to support you musically to give your voice the option to be at its best? I mean, do you just need a guitarist and a drummer, or a pianist and a drummer? What's the minimum?
Oh, the minimum is just me, solo.
Just doing a bit of a cappella.
Oh, playing the piano. So if that would be the minimum, would be me playing the piano and singing. And then it can go to your heart's content, right up to orchestras and full bands and everything else from there. So the absolute minimum would be just me sitting at the piano and singing. And then, say for example, New Year's Eve, I did, it was myself and a trio, so that was with piano, double bass and drums, and that was a jazz performance at the Shangri-La, which is right on the harbour, near the bridge and near the Opera House. So we enjoy that New Year's, bringing in the new year very much, playing our jazz. So like configuration can be anything from just me to whatever you can imagine. And
you would love the thought of a full set of strings and horns and percussion and something like the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Is that something you've done before or a desire to do? I have performed a few times with an orchestra, and it is an incredible feeling. You actually feel like you're in the movies. Like when you hear the music swelling all around you, you just feel transported when it's happening. So it's a very, very special experience. So absolutely, I would love to do more of that, because there is something extremely special about it.
Yeah, except at the end of it, the conductor gets all the claps. You're just the person who made the noise. I still find that bizarre. Simone, we probably should let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday, but before we do, let's give this album a plug. It's called The Art of Collaboration. It by Simone Waddell, Waddell. Not surprisingly, the website is simonewaddell.com, so you should be able to find it there. The 5 songs on it that people are going to instantly recognise are Beds Are Burning by Midnight, well, not by Midnight Oil, the song made famous by Midnight Oil, Burn For You, the John Farnham, not the In Excess Burn For You, which we're going to hear in a moment. Fall At Your Feet, we heard earlier, the Crowded House song, The Horses, Daryl Braithwaite, and Mystify, In Excess, all recontextualised. There's a big word, Rob. I've been reading that website again. And also a whole lot of your own original music as well. Where can people buy it?
Well, you can buy a CD at simonewaddell.com and you'll get a physical signed copy. And it's also on all streaming platforms or iTunes, where you can get your digital download if you no longer use CDs. What I love about CDs is the liner notes. I love just seeing all the information about the songs and who played what and the lyrics, and I love all of that. So for people who love CDs like me, you go to simonewaddell.com. It's available also in JB Hi-Fi and other stores, but the website's probably the best place and you'll get it straight away. And as I said, or iTunes or streaming platforms as well.
We have a bit of a policy here of saying to people, if you are going to listen to it on streaming platforms, it is essential that you purchase the track first, because that streaming platforms you get two-thirds of nothing, I would have thought, as a performer. At least if people pay the $2.19 or whatever it is per track, or $15 for an album, whatever it is, at least a few bucks gets back to you, and we very strongly encourage people to do that. Yeah, sure, listen to it in your streaming as well, but please put your hand in your pocket for the artist as well. That's a really important part of it.
Look, that is really, really crucial. Streaming brings, like you said, two-thirds of nothing. It brings nothing to the artist. iTunes a little bit, though iTunes does count towards the charts. But the physical copy seems to rate the best, and then iTunes second. So yeah, anytime you're paying for music, it's still going to be better all round.
And you cannot sign a digital download. There's today's piece of philosophy.
Correct.
Rob's got his calculator out here. He's trying to work out what two-thirds of nothing is. Nothing
is.
Yeah, he's working it out. He's looking at me with that. That still comes to nothing, I'm sure. Hey, Simone, it has been great to have a chat to you here on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. I'll be in touch soon to buy a copy of the album, because I've only downloaded tracks, and I paid the download tracks, please, folks. But I will be buying a CD. We want to see a signed copy of it. That's what we want.
Oh, wonderful.
So you'll see that pop up very, very soon. It is 29 minutes past 10 o'clock. We are going to turn our attention to a song that's got not only Simone, but also Tommy Emmanuel and Ray Thistlethwaite. That's a name. Surely you'd change your name.
What a talented man he is, though.
Yes, he is, but what a name. And he doesn't spell it normally. Like, he's got his Ray as R-A-I, and Thistlethwaite's got a Y in it somewhere. Have a good chat to him about it some stage, will you, Simone?
Yeah, smart name.
It's really hard for us to pronounce.
Simone, thank you very much for your time. Thoroughly enjoyed that chat. Best wishes. Now that you can actually perform again, I hope you just rock the socks off them everywhere.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure and honour. Thank you.
More so for us. Here's the song. Thanks, Simone.